Good morning, I'm Dr. Priyal, and today I'm going to be presenting on headache and its management. And it's going to be predominantly on migraine, but I'm going to touch on some acute headaches as well, and on some other types of headaches as well. So this slide is showing ICD-3 beta classification of headaches, which classifies headache as primary, secondary, and some other painful cranial neuropathies and facial pains like trigeminal neuralgia. So primary headaches usually just refer to tension type headaches and migraines, and trigeminal autonomic kephalalgias like cluster headache, paroxysmal hemicrania, and hemicrania continua. Um, and secondary headaches are the ones that need to be excluded first in your history and history part, yes. So secondary headaches can be because of any head and neck trauma. It can be due to any secondary infections like meningoencephalitis. They can be due to substance or withdrawal, substance use or withdrawal of any substance. Then some ENT and dental complaints can or diseases can also cause headache as well. So there's an Eagle syndrome which causes an electric shock-like sensation in the distribution of the glossopharyngeal cranial nerve, much like trigeminal neuralgia, which is due to the affection or compression of the fifth cranial nerve. Some psychiatric disorders as well are known to cause secondary headaches. So talk something about the primary headaches first. So primary headache, the tension type headache, which we know is the most common headache, it usually occurs in middle-aged people, and uh, it's 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 it doesn't usually people will say that they are getting on along their day. So visual analog score of less than 8 or 9, by which I mean that these headaches or tension type headaches do not affect the sleep of the patient, and they do not wake him up from sleep. And patient usually goes on well during the day. 1/3 of tension type headaches are associated with depression, and yeah, the character as it is shown, it's like a band of constriction on the forehead, or it's like a constriction or a pressure-like sensation in the anterior head. So, telling something briefly about the management. Acute management of tension type headache would include NSAIDs, but there are some cases of tension type headache which will affect work or the lifestyle of the patient. So these long standing tension type headaches need prophylactic treatment with TCAs, amitriptyline, like amitriptyline. Now, jumping to trigeminal autonomic kephalalgias, these headaches are all very short lasting, and there are a large number of episodes throughout the day. So the other thing about these is they are associated with autonomic features like lacrimation, increased lacrimation, sweating, flushing of the area, or swelling of the eyelids, swelling of the side of the forehead, fullness of the ear, and ptosis of the eyelids and meiosis of the pupils. So these autonomic symptoms are associated with trigeminal autonomic kephalalgias, all of them. Cluster headache is usually seen in a young male, and these are nocturnal and will awaken. They are so severe, and that it will awaken the person from his sleep. Uh, they usually uh, occur in the night, and in men. They have a boring character, so people complain that they have a sense of something drilling inside their head. So that's why the patient will always be agitated. We give For an acute, aborting an acute episode of cluster headache, 6 milligrams sumatriptan subcutaneous can be given. And other trigeminal autonomic kephalalgias like the SUMP and SUNA, they are all of the trigeminal autonomic kephalalgias are so transient that when by the time you are initiating an abortive treatment, they'll be gone. So sometimes SUNA no, but they are known to respond to lignocaine. Similarly, paroxysmal hemipnea is responsive to indomethacin, and for hemipnea continua as well, we give indomethacin. And indomethacin is started in hemipnea continua specifically. Indomethacin is started at 25 milligram TID, and then it is increased to 50 up to a maximum of 75 TID, and 3 times daily. And what this does is you can stop in between when the patient says that he has gone into remission and there is a relief of symptom. And you have to maintain this remission for at least 3 months before tapering the indomethacin to the lowest dose. Now, at this lowest dose, also a gabapentin or an antiepileptic has to be added to treat hemipnea continua. For trigeminal autonomic kephalalgia, this is a superficial electric shock-like sensation on the face, and it has a trigger. It has a cutaneous trigger. We usually give a carbamazepine in it, and always check the status of HLA B1502 to know if the patient is susceptible to Stevens-Johnson's syndrome. Now, if trigeminal neuralgia is unilateral, it's usually because of compression of the nerve, trigeminal nerve. But if it is bilateral, which happens in the case of multiple sclerosis, then it is due to demyelination. So this slide I've put to talk about another classification of headaches, which is more of clinical classification, and we divide headache in a dangerous headache, which is essentially nothing but headache with increased intracranial pressure, and a non-dangerous headache. So this is a more clinical classification, and one should be able to elicit histories of the histories that suggest an raised intracranial pressure, like a low time to peak. And this severe sudden onset headache is also very descriptively described as a thunderclap. The other used in the history will be a vomiting preceding history or an early morning headache, and some postural changes that may either change the nature of headache or aggravate or worsen the chronic headache. Now, here I want to say that all the postural changes like bending, coughing, sneezing, and Valsalva can provide cues to an increased intracranial pressure, but these symptoms can also be due to a low CSF, a posterior cranial fossa tumor, and Chiari malformations. So, this is a papilledema. This is a grade 2 papilledema, which shows a halo. It shows a halo. A grade 1 papilledema will show only a partially circumferential halo. This is a grade 3 in which there is attenuation or disappearance of the peripheral vessels. There is a loss of the major vessels that leave the disc. This is a grade 4 papilledema, and this is completely a pale optic nerve head, and this is a grade 5 papilledema. So what are the types of headaches? So this presentation is mostly going to be on migraines. So I'm going to briefly tell you about something about migraines. So the onset is usually, it's seen in females usually, and the onset of the first episode is in the 10 to 20 years of age. Migraines are classically seen with aura. With aura is the classical type. And these are only 20% of the total migraines that we see. But a common migraine can also occur, and this is without aura. These are 80% of the migraines. Now, Aura can be a visual aura, like this patient would say that there is a sensation, a funny sensation, or vision of zigzags or fortification spectra or scintillating scotomas. And these are more common. Other types of auras can also occur, like abdominal aura and auditory auras. These auras usually gradually progress. They progress over 4 minutes and are followed by the headache and followed by a headache within an hour or immediately. And after the episode, the auras vanish completely. So they are completely reversible. At the onset of headache, before that, 1 to 2 days before, the patient may complain of having disturbed mood symptoms. The girl may complain of being very cranky or having an anger outbursts. So they would know that their headache is about to throw up. Then after the headache, for the next 1 to 2 days, there is a sense of fatigue or exhaustion that the person faces. And during this episode, the patient would say that my headache gets aggravated by any activity that I do, which is quite unlike to tension type headache, in which the person can get along with his daily activity. In migraines, they cannot. They just need a quiet room to sit and just relax. So and also one more thing about migraine is that they can be episode. They start with an episode being an episodic headache, but they will progress to chronic headache gradually. And what will happen is that a unilateral migraine will turn into a holocranial migraine, and will involve the entire skull. So so we have to make that note that while taking the history. So what is the reason for this headache? So there's a reason for aura and there's a reason for headache. So for aura is caused by vasoconstriction. This is an old school of thought. And this vasoconstriction is followed by vasodilatation, which causes the headache. That's why we give dilators for the prevention of headache as preventive therapies like beta blockers to counter the inciting event. And we give constrictors like triptans for averting the headache. The latest school of thought says that there is a cortical spreading depression, which is described as a hyperperfusion that migrates from the occipital lobe to all the way to the frontal lobe. And this cortical spreading depression is responsible for the aura. Another explanation for a headache is CGRP cytokine theory, in which it is believed that the CGRP that is released post-synaptically is responsible for causing dilatation of the vessel distal to the synaptic the nerve terminal, and this terminal the CGRP is responsible for this dilatation, and the dilatation leads to headache. Now in this diagram, I want to tell that there are only certain pain sensitive structures. The dura is pain sensitive in the brain, the fox cerebri is pain sensitive, proximal pile arteries are pain sensitive, middle meningeal arteries are pain sensitive, but the brain parenchyma and the distal proximal arteries, ependyma and choroid are not. So what mediates pain is when there is CGRP release from the nerve terminals, it causes dilatation of the arteries distal to it. Now, this CGRP is also known to cause peripheral and central pain sensitization. So these arteries, the throbbing nature of these arteries are perceived as abnormal sensations, and that causes pain. So the pain, CGRP that is released on the face and around the trigeminal nerve terminals in the meninges are taken up and they're taken up into the trigeminal ganglion. And from here, these are the first order neurons, and from here they go into the trigeminal nerve nucleus. The more caudal part is responsible for transmitting second order neuron to the thalamus, where the pain is perceived. So photophobia and phonophobia are nothing but the manifestation of CGRP being released around the meningeal trigeminal nerves, and are nothing but the manifestation of an abnormally increased sensitization to light and sound. So CGRP, it causes neurogenic inflammation, and this neurogenic inflammation it also causes central and peripheral sensitization. So neurogenic inflammation, it causes synaptic excitability, which leads to central and peripheral sensitization, and this leads to potent vasodilatation, and more vasodilatation means that more and more CGRP will be released, and this leads to further neurogenic inflammation at the nerve terminals. Now, it was known from quite a long time that trigeminal system had CGRP receptors located in them. But the trigeminal vascular reflex, that CGRP was released from the nerve terminal, and that led to the dilatation, which is actually the epicenter of migraine, came to be known in 1986. And the association between the CGRP and the acute attacks was established in 1990 when CGRP was shown to be released during one of the acute attacks. Something about the management of headache. So management includes both diagnosis as well as treatment. So in subsequent slides, I'm gonna be referring more on throwing light on monoclonal antibodies, and particularly these antibodies called
speaker fell out of my hand, my right arm. I lost the use of my right arm 15 years ago in 2006. Had my first surgery on my neck. Now I'm using the use of my left arm. Okay. Put this here.
Continue. I'm sorry, I can't help that. Okay.
So Evinumab, Fremanezumab, Galcanezumab, and Eptinezumab. These are monoclonal antibodies, out of which all of them are injectable, and Eptinezumab is an infusion. Galcanezumab can also be given for aborting cluster headaches. And injectable monoclonal antibodies are usually given once a month, and this is followed by quarterly injections. Another class is the small molecular CGRPs, which are the GPANs. The GPANs are the drugs like the Ubrogepant and the Rimegepant. These are also, out of these, Rimegepant is an oral small molecular CGRP antagonist, and it can be used for preventive as well as abortive treatment of migraine. One use of Ubrogepant and Rimegepant is that it is superior to triptans for the treatment or as an abortive therapy in patients with cardiovascular disease like angina, Prinzmetal angina, myocardial infarction, or peripheral artery disease, in which triptans cannot be given. So these are safe, and their side effects. Ubrogepant causes dry mouth. That is there. The third class is an agonist of 5-HT1F receptors. So all the triptans and all the drugs are 5-HT1D1B receptor antagonists, and these are agonists at 5-HT1. These are the ditans, the lasmiditan. Lasmiditan is also safe in migraines with cardiovascular disease, and they come with a warning that because of their drowsiness, a person should not operate on machinery for the next 8 hours after consumption. So, managing headache includes both the diagnosis and the treatment. For the diagnosis, we have to establish a good history, and a neurology examination is important. And at this point, no, you should have an idea of what the headache is, and take one step ahead to decide if the patient would need an imaging study or not. So if a headache is there with an abnormal finding on neurological examination, you have to plan the patient for an MRI. Then patient's age is important because any headache beyond 55 years of age warrants an imaging. You have to look for red flags on history taking, and the red flag would be a sudden onset headache that gets rapidly worsened, and any abnormal neurologic finding that I just told, and any postural or worsening of the headache due to Alzheimer's, bending, coughing, or sneezing. And another thing that you should ask about headache is what causes the headache, or when does it start? How often it occurs? And this is I'm going to take a minute to describe why, because this is going to determine what treatment you would be giving to the patient. If, for example, the patient has just 4 to 7 episodes of 4 to 7 headache days per month, then it's a low frequency migraine, and you would want to give a treatment for a mild migraine and mild headache and just prescribe NSAIDs. But if it is something like a very high frequency headache with 8 to 14 headache days per month, then, or a chronic migraine with more than 15 headache days per month, then you should think of prescribing a long acting injectable drug, or a nasal spray of sumatriptan or zolmitriptan, or think of using a monoclonal antibody if the patient has failed treatment. So we're going to talk about this in a little while. So you should always look for red flags, and you should ask them about how fast did the headache peak, and how long does the headache last, and the location and the quality of the headache are usually asked to determine the difference between the tension type headache or the migraine or the trigeminal neuralgia. So what triggers, you should always ask a trigger, because everybody has a personal trigger, and this will help because these are mostly modifiable. So you should have the knowledge to counsel patient to stay away from these triggers, so that the treatment that you are providing is more effective for the patient. A good history should always include a history of the auras, because auras can sometimes make transient ischemic attack and stroke as well. So if a person is having migraine for the first time, and the auras can be frightening for them. So you have to address this issue and reassure the patient about the nature of their symptoms. And then you should always look for associated complaints like fever, and keep looking for secondary causes or red flags of headaches. So after good history, you should be able to make up for if you want to get an imaging done for this patient. Let me tell you about something about imaging. It is known that less than 1% of the cases with tension type headaches have any abnormality on MRI. On epidemiology studies, it has been found that apparently healthy population, the general population, can have some white matter changes, and these changes only increase with age. So, and these changes have no correlation with the duration of headache, or the frequency of headache, or the progression of headache, and thus they have no clinical impact. So if a person comes with you with a follow up to review the MRI finding, and you find such white matter lesions, then you should be able to reassure the patient what the nature of these findings are, and you should always address the cardiovascular risk factors and the cerebrovascular risk factors, because some if the hypertension is not corrected, or if it is not treated properly, then it is likely to worsen the headache. So always address the cardiovascular and the cerebrovascular risk factors in these patients. So there are some recommendations by AN for a chronic headache, and these include an unexplained neurologic finding and an atypical headache features, which you should be able to elicit on your history, and additional risk factors like immunocompromised or old age or cancer patients which have a new onset headache. So you should keep away, because I would summarize here that any headache, any migraine rather, that doesn't have or has any migraine that has a normal neurologic examination does not warrant MRI, because because there are some problems with MRI. It causes claustrophobia. Then there is a problem of cost, and then some cases may require sedation. And you should always think about the stress that the patient will face during the anticipation of the imaging results. And this stress is known to worsen the symptoms of headache as well. So, but what are the signs? What are the signs that warrant imaging? Again, postural headache that worsens with Valsalva, rapidly increasing frequency of headaches, lack of coordination or loss of balance, and abnormal tingling sensation that occurs with headache, or hypnic headaches, which are nothing but severe nocturnal headaches that last for long duration. That also warrants imaging. So something about the treatment. So for migraine, the first line is amitriptyline, nortriptyline, and anti-epileptics like topiramate and metoprolol or propranolol, beta blockers. So, and there are other drugs as well, like pitozepam and telmisartan and valproate, but they are known to have lesser efficacy than these first line drugs. So here I want to tell you about when you should start considering monoclonal antibodies for the treatment of migraine. If there was a low frequency headache and the patient says that and the patient has failed on 2 first line anti migraine drugs, and he complains that he is not able to do his daily chores, and there's debilitation due to the pain. So you should stop all other drugs in this case and give a monoclonal antibody instead. Similarly, if there is chronic migraine or a high frequency migraine plus failure on 2 of the anti-migrainal drugs, then also you should because this doesn't require a disability criteria, because this is all a chronic migraine patient and a patient with high frequency migraine will already be very disabled. It just requires a failure of medication criteria to start monoclonal antibodies. For abortion of an acute episode, a 6 mg sumatriptan can be given subcutaneously, and this is also good for aborting cluster headache episode. And for aborting a migraine episode in patients with CVD, ubrogepant or rimegepant are good monoclonal antibodies. So here I just add some acute headaches which warrant some acute headaches that warrant CT. Any severe sudden onset headaches or thunderclap headache will require a CT. Any headache that occurs in an HIV positive patient, a new onset or a new type of headache. Then any headache that occurs suddenly beyond 55 years of age, that also requires CT. So I'm coming to the end of this by showing you a slide of a picture of this, and this is essentially subarachnoid hemorrhage, and you should always be able to pick up this condition on your history. And thunderclap headache is what symptom is that is used to do. It's a very descriptive symptom that is associated with subarachnoid hemorrhage. But thunderclap headache is not very specific to subarachnoid hemorrhage, and it can occur in pituitary apoplexy or arterial dissection as well. So we call it the star of death. So you should be able to pick up this on the history. And that was my presentation. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.